So today I'm going to present some results about fluid structure interaction model and their stabilization. I have a long list of collaborators for that. So I will present some results with Michel Fournier and Mokhtar India, but I worked a lot. First with Vanny Nathan. I started working on this type of problem with him. Next with Debayan and Arnab, I'm going to present some results with them. And we started also some numerical collaboration with Goody. So, okay, I don't know. Okay, it's the second slide. So the goal is to stabilize a fluid flow when there is some elastic part in the domain. So this is an experimental setting. We have a wind tunnel here and a kind of wing. We have some profile of velocity here. And okay, in the perfect situation, this is the vorticity of the fluid. So the solution is like that. Only this part of the domain is represented here. But due to some variation, since this flow is unstable, there are some shading of vortices, and we would like to act only on this part. We would like to be able to move the plate in order to stabilize the flow. So this is the picture we obtain. This is the case when the control is acting. And this is without control. So what we see without control, we have a continuous shading of vortices here. But if we use the deformation of the beam here above and below, we are able to fully stabilize the flow. So this is what I'm going to explain from a mathematical viewpoint. So this is the domain for this particular situation, the domain that we consider. We take some Dirichlet condition everywhere here and a Neumann boundary condition at the exit of the channel. Here, in the inflow condition, for the experiment, the boundary condition is not zero. It's a given profile plus some perturbation. And on the structure here, the velocity of the fluid, which will be equal to the velocity of the displacement of the beam, will be given by this displacement. Okay. So now, when the beam is deformed like that, we see that the domain in which we have to solve the Navier-Stokes equation is a time-dependent domain. And the boundary is also time-dependent. It's why the problem is quite complicated, because the domain in which we solve the fluid equation depends on the displacement of the structure. I go here because I would like to, I will use everywhere what is called the stress tensor, nu or 2 nu, grad u plus grad u transpose minus p by identity. Okay, this is the stress tensor, and so the Neumann boundary condition on gamma n is of this form. N is normal, so it corresponds to the first vector here. So when I take the divergence of sigma here, what I get is the divergence of a gradient. So this is Laplacian of u, plus the divergence of the transpose of a gradient. And so here I obtain nu, the gradient of the divergence. And the gradient of p times the identity is nothing else than the gradient of p. So when you write the Stokes or Navier-Stokes equation, there are two ways for writing the equation, either with only the Laplace of u or the divergence of this tensor. When the divergence of u is 0, this is exactly nu Laplace, nu Laplace u minus grad p. So this is the usual equation, but of course, when the divergence is not 0, we have to be careful about that. Okay. So, so the motivation are to try to apply to this fluid structure interaction model what we did previously. So find a feedback stabilization, try to see if we can feed the abstract framework introduced previously. Can we use spectral projection? Can we do some finite element approximation? And so this will be the plan of the talk. So I already presented the motivation and the goal. I start at the beginning, not by the stabilization problem, but by presenting some local in time existence of a solution. Why I'm doing that? Because the technical technical points from the math viewpoints are similar in both cases for local existence of our stabilization, but the difficulty are different and the framework is a little bit simpler in that case. The other case is quite helpful. I will explain why. So it's better to introduce first local existence of solution. So the situation is like that. So this is the initial configuration. Omega, this is a general situation, not necessarily the same as previously. So I have a fluid here in this part. So this is the domain occupied by the fluid, and this is the domain occupied by some elastic body inside the fluid. And gamma S is the boundary between the fluid and the elastic body. So this is the situation at time 0, but due to the deformation of the elastic body and to its displacement, the domain is now different from here, so it depends on time. And, okay, what are the equations? So in this domain, depending on time, and for every time t, we have to solve the Navier-Stokes equation here. So this is the linear part, this is the convective part. I put an x here to say that the derivative is with respect to x. So it means that x is the variable in omega f t. So here I have some geometrical point, here is x. And here it's different. So I'm going to use another notation here, it will be y. So this is why I take here the gradient with respect to the x variable, the same for the divergence. Okay, so this is the classical Navier-Stokes equation, classical, except that the domain now is changing with the time. What are the boundary conditions? So at the exterior boundary here, to simplify, I assume that u is equal to 0. This is the exterior boundary. But at the interface between the elastic body and the fluid, the velocity of the fluid is given by the velocity of the displacement of the elastic body. So W is the displacement of the elastic body. And so the transformation here, which transform the domain at initial time into the domain at time t, is the identity at the boundary. Yeah, it's the identity plus the displacement of the elastic body. But at time t equal to 0, my initial configuration is omega 0. So at time 0, x is the identity. So x of y is the identity. So you see that the y variable here refers to this configuration here, while x refers to this one. So you must understand that there are two types of domain and two types of variation. So now, yeah, I don't know if I have written that. Yeah. Now I have to write the coupling between the Navier-Stokes equation and the elastic part. So more or less, for the elastic part, I write that the force exerted by the fluid onto the elastic body is equal to the force exerted by the body onto the fluid. There is some balance of momentum. So for that, what I need? I need to calculate the force exerted by the fluid onto the structure. But I've not mentioned that the fluid equation so for the fluid, the equation is stated into a time-dependent domain. So we say that we have an Eulerian formulation, but for the elastic body, the equation of elasticity are defined not in the moving domain, but in the configuration of the body. So this equation has not to be written in omega st, but in omega s. And so I have to, when I write the balance of equation of momentum between the fluid and the structure, I have to write the stress tensor of the fluid, this stress tensor, the normal component of the stress tensor, not on the boundary of omega st. So I know u in omega ft. So I know u at the boundary of this domain, but I do not know. I have to write precisely what is this stress tensor, not acting on this part of the domain, but on this fixed structure. Of course, it's doable. We are going to do that. But it means that I need to rewrite sigma not in this configuration, but in the initial configuration. This is why the problem is a little bit complicated. But for that, I need to know the transformation X and its inverse. But the choice for X is not unique. It's why it's a little bit tricky. Okay, but it's important to understand that. And so I cannot write now the equation for the elastic body if I have not given X. X here is given only at the boundary. But in order to calculate some derivative here, I need to know X inside the domain and X and its inverse. Okay? So now I assume that X is known. I'm going to explain how I can choose X after. I assume that X is known. So I have a C1 diffeomorphism from omega ft into, sorry, I made a mistake, is the reverse here. Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, because X starts from Y, which is in the initial configuration, up to the deformed one. Okay? So you have to take here omega f0 here and omega ft here. Okay? So now I assume that X is known and it's a diffeomorphism, so its inverse is also known. And now I would like to find U, not in the deformed configuration, but in the initial one. So I have to define U, the velocity in the variable Y. So I have to introduce this change of variable, both for the velocity and the pressure, okay? And so we have to introduce this change of variable, and we have to rewrite the equation not in the X variable, but in the Y variable. So I have to compute this quantity in terms of Y. And this is only the chain rule formula. So in order to compute the, okay, yeah, if I use the chain rule formula, I'm going to write that. I have to say that dxi of U is nothing else than dxi of U tilde and the derivative of Y with respect to xi. And this is the derivative of, sorry, I want to compute okay. It's better to write like that. So I have to compute the derivative of the derivative with respect to Y here. I start from this identity. So I take the derivative here. I compute the derivative of U with respect to X and X with respect to Y, okay? So this is nothing else than grad U times the Jacobian of the transformation X. And now, if I take the inverse, so if I need this quantity in terms of this one, I have to compose by the inverse of the Jacobian of X, which is the Jacobian of Y. So this is the chain rule formula. for a vector. So now I write the derivative in the line. This is a matrix. When I do this for a scalar, I have to take the transpose of the Jacobian here. So these are the transformation. And so if I replace this into the equation, I obtain du tilde over dt, and I take here the expression of the Laplace operator transformed in the y variable. Okay? So I have not written here this part, but I can write also, plus the gradient of the pressure. So now this is the equation in the initial configuration. Similarly, this is the divergence condition, and these are the boundary conditions. So now everything is written in the initial configuration. Okay, how I'm going to prove some existence result? I have to say that at time t equal to 0, at time t equal to 0, x is the identity, and so y is also the identity. And so grad, all these Jacobian here are the identity. And so what I get finally, at time t equal to 0, the equation, even if it is written for u tilde, is nothing else than the Laplace equation, and the same for the gradient of the pressure. So for t equal to 0, this is very close to, or t close to 0, this is very close to the Laplace of u. And so I am going to rewrite the equation in this form, not only for t equal to 0, but for any time t. And in the right-hand side, I will find the difference between this quantity, which is the exact one, and the one I have written here. So more or less, I have something of this form, and minus, so times u, minus this Haufful expression here that I have written here, and the same for the pressure. Okay, but when I write a fixed point, this is small for t small, and this is exactly what I am going to use later. Okay. So now, in the previous slide, I have not at all introduced x. X was given, but we do not know what is x. There are many possible choices. The most classical one are these two one. Okay, this is one possibility is to say, okay, I know that at the boundary dx over dt is equal to u, and so I take the same expression not only at the boundary gamma s, but everywhere. So this is called the Lagrangian transformation, and in that case, taking the integral in time, I obtain this expression for x. So the identity plus some additional deformation which evolve with the time. I'm not going to use this in the slide. Before I'm mainly using this type of domain to simplify the presentation. So in this domain, what I have just a beam here located on the upper part. I assume that here the channel is of wide 1. So this segment here is equal to 1. And so I can, in that special situation, I can define X analytically because W now is given by the vector 0. I assume that the displacement is only vertical. So the first component of the displacement is 0. And the second one is what I called eta, which is the displacement of the beam from 1. And so the transformation X is nothing else than the identity for the first component, and for the second component, the identity plus y2 times eta. Okay. So now I want to prove some existence result for fluid structure model. And I take to obtain this result, I use a particular situation in which I have a beam located on the upper part, and so the equation for the beam is a second order in time equation for the displacement given by eta, the second derivative of eta with respect to time, the fourth derivative with respect to x, equal to, okay, this is the force of the fluid. And in the model I'm going to consider, I'm going to assume that I have some damping here. So it's an elastic beam with a damping, which is eta xx, the time derivative of this quantity. But since I am going to use some idea from control theory, I am writing this as a first order equation. So I introduce eta 1, which is the time derivative of eta, and I write the equation here for eta 2. So writing the equation for eta 2, this is eta, sorry, eta 1t, eta 2, sorry, eta 2 is equal to eta 1t, or if I want to write an evolution equation like that. Okay, so now I have eta 2t here, plus I write this in the form of the B Laplace operator. S is to say that it is on gamma S for the structure. It's applied to eta 1, and so on. So minus delta Laplacian of eta 2 equal to something. So this is nothing else than exactly the same equation above, written above. This is the force exerted by the fluid. I'm going to not to enter into the details, and these are the nonlinear terms I obtain. Okay, so this is the system I would like to study. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a fixed point. So in the fixed point, I choose the data in the nonlinear terms here, and I solve the corresponding equation, which is now linear. So the equation I have to solve is the following one. So I I take some, in place of U tilde, P tilde, and so on, I take some U hat, P hat, eta 1, eta 2 hat. The hat is, no, I take here, it's not nonlinear. Okay, so the equations are given like that. And here I have some eta hat. When I linearize, I obtain the pressure plus some, the pressure of the fluid, given here, plus some additional term. And so this is the system I have to solve. And I would like to show that the mapping which give the solution to this equation for a given right-hand side here in terms of this quantity is a contraction ensemble. Okay, and so for that, I have to specify the functional space in which I'm going to write everything. So what I need the space E in which I'm looking for the solution. So I denote by E, but E indexed by the terminal time t. Why? Because I'm going to try to obtain a local in time solution. So the time is not fixed. And so I have to take for different possible time to define this space ET. I have to specify the space for the initial condition, E naught. And I am going to say in which space I have to look for the right-hand side of the equation. And so I have to specify where the linear, nonlinear terms are. And this is in Ft. Okay, I just mentioned here that I take the initial displacement equal to 0. Why? Because if it is not 0, I have to write everything in the initial configuration, and the initial configuration, if the beam is not, the displacement is not 0, I have to write another displacement. But okay, this makes the things complicated, and I just write in this simple situation, but we have always to come back to this initial situation. So this is what I need. Okay. Okay, and we need regularity result for now a linear system in which I replace the nonlinear term by source term here. We need regularity result of this type. Okay, so I look for the solution in the space E depending on time t, and I have to estimate the solution of the linear system in this space in terms of the initial condition in E naught. This is 0, but as I explained, I can take something else, plus the right-hand side in Ft. But what is important is to have, and this is the difficult point, to have an estimate of this type for all time t. It means that I have to choose to prove that the constant here is independent of time t when t is close to 0. For t large is easy. The difficulty is for t small. Okay. And this is the type of result we can obtain. So what is written here? It is written that if I choose V naught in H1, more or less, and 0 on the boundary condition gamma I, the divergence of V naught is 0. If I take eta 1 non-zero, I have to assume that. Eta 2 is given in this space, and I have this compatibility condition. This is the normal to gamma S. So, okay. So what is written here in blue means this gives me the space that I have denoted by E naught. So this is the space of initial condition. This is the space for the right-hand side. Okay, so the source term in the fluid equation is L2 in time, L2 in omega. In order to make this shorter, I don't put omega here, but omega is there. The source term in the divergence must be in L2 H1 omega, enter, at H1 in time, and the dual of some Sobolev space with a weight delta that I'm going to present now. And for the source term in the elastic equation, I take L2 in time, L2 in space, but now the space is only gamma S. So this is the space for the right-hand side, and the space for the solution is this one. Okay? So what is this one? It's more or less something classical. L2 in time, H2 in space, enter H1 in time, L2 in space. I denote it by this, but I have some weight, delta. I'm going to say what is it. The same for the pressure. Because I have a fourth order equation here with a damping, I obtain good regularity results for eta 1, which is in H4 in space, and H2 in time. And for eta 2, I obtain L2 in space with values in H2 in L2 in time and H2 in space, enter H1 L2. Okay, so what are these Sobolev spaces with delta? It means that I have more or less H2, except that when I take the second derivative of because here the derivative varies from 0 to 2. So when I take the derivative of V, for example, the second derivative of V, it's not exactly in L2, but it's in L2 if I put the weight here, R, J to the power 2 delta. Okay, what is Rj? Rj is the distance, okay, that in that particular situation, where are the difficulty? The difficulty are here at the corner and at the junction. For the initial, for the junction between Neumann and Dirichlet condition. So I have J equal to 1, 2, 3, and 4 corners. And so R4 is this distance, and so on. And so I have to introduce some weight. It means that I cannot estimate exactly in L2, but in some space weight. In this particular situation, for I have taken here the same delta, but I can write differently the things. I can take any delta corresponding to each junction, but to simplify, I put delta. Actually, the delta associated here to the corner Dirichlet boundary condition, when I have something which is convex, we have seen in the previous lecture, but we do not need any weight, but we need some weight here. And we have to compare these Sobolev spaces with weight with classical Sobolev spaces, and of course, we do not exactly obtain H2, but we have something which is better than H3 half. Okay, so this is the end of the story for the functional setting. Now, now I have to add something else. for this fluid structure model, I must be careful. When I solve the linear equation, I can have a very large displacement for the, okay, I can have something like that. It's not important because for the linear model, the domain is fixed. But now, when I come back to the nonlinear model, I see that this is not an admissible configuration. So I must be careful, and so I must make some constraint in order to avoid contact. So I must be above the contact. This is why I have to introduce a condition for the contact. So the contact is obtained when 1, which is this value, plus the displacement, is equal to 0. So I ask that eta 1 is such that this quantity remains strictly positive. And so the fixed point is written in this ball here. So I take the solution into the space ET. I have to take a bound in this norm. I have to assume that this condition is satisfied, so I have to fix some positive gamma here, which is a lower bound, and I take the initial condition in this space. So this is the ball in which I can obtain a fixed point. So how I proceed, it depends on the initial data. So for a given initial data, I assume that I have some bound M. I assume that gamma at the beginning is given by 2 because this is 0. And I take twice this quantity. And I choose, no, sorry, I take here 1/2 of this quantity. It's the reverse. And I choose mu 2 times this quantity times the continuity constant I have introduced before. And thanks to that, and thanks to some nonlinear estimate, I can prove this type of result for the nonlinear term. And also, sorry, okay, no. Okay, like that. Okay, and so what I do, I choose, so I have this, when I make the difference between the two quantities, of course, since I take the same initial condition for the two different functions I take in the ball, the term coming from the initial condition disappear, and I have only this term. And it's why I can obtain a contraction, because I can choose T small enough in such a way that with this quantity is strictly less than 1, for example, equal to 1/2. And I can also check the non-contact condition. So thanks to that, I can obtain this type of local in time existence of solution. So if I take this quantity with eta 1 equal to 0 to simplify, in this space, I know that I have proved that there exists some time t for which the nonlinear system admits the solution in ET. Okay, so now I am nearly at the middle of the talk. And so, yeah, I have to, I have necessarily to introduce the tools here. Otherwise, you will not understand what follows. So what I need the main, one of the difficulties to prove a correct and optimal regularity result for the linearized system. Okay. So I have to rewrite the equation for the fluid using the Loche projector. Now I have to introduce the space for which only the condition on the normal component equal to 0 is given on gamma d, because we do not need that on the Neumann part. So on the Neumann part, because of this Neumann condition, the pressure will be 0 here on the Neumann part. But the difficulty is to say what is the pressure. So formally, I don't know if I have written the equation somewhere. No. I have to come back. I have to come back to this equation. So what I do, for the equation, I assume that the source terms are 0. I would like to see what is the pressure Q. So I rewrite in a simple form this equation in this form. So the idea is very simple, but after the mathematical analysis is much more complicated. I take the divergence of this equation, and I put the minus Laplace Q on the other side. So I have to write the equation for Laplace Q, which is a Laplace for Q, which is a Laplace equation, and I have to write divergence of the time derivative of V minus nu, the divergence of Laplace V. And okay, on the part where I have sigma V Q n equal to 0, I obtain a Dirichlet condition for Q. And on the other part, I have to take into account a Neumann boundary condition. So how I'm going to take the Neumann boundary condition? I assume that this is valid up to the boundary gamma d. And because it is valid up to the boundary gamma d, I take the normal, the inner product with the normal, and I obtain here this quantity equal to minus Vt dot n minus nu Laplace V dot n. So this is formal, but more or less this is what I have to analyze. And so we end up, so we end up, when I write the equation for the stress tensor, this is the symmetric tensor, the epsilon is a classical notation, but that I have not introduced. It is the symmetric tensor. So this is what I obtain, and this is quite complicated. So this is the Neumann boundary condition. This is the analog of what I have written here. But when I take the the equation with the stress tensor intake of taking Laplace operator. This is exactly the Vt dot n. So what is important to understand is the fact that in this equation, there is something depending on V. So I denoted NV, So means the Neumann problem associated with V. And there is a Neumann problem associated to eta 2 because V at the boundary is equal to eta 2. So Vt is equal to eta 2t. Okay. But now I know that V has to be split into two parts, PV and I minus PV. Okay. So it means that when I replace Q in the structure equation in order to obtain something in a nice form, I have to take into account this term and the other term. And it's why when I write as an evolution equation, I obtain an equation of this form. So let me explain why I obtain some matrix here, which is not exactly the identity. When I write the equation for the displacement, I have eta tt plus the B Laplace operator and so on equal to Q. But now Q is the solution to some Neumann problem. On the structure. Eta 2t. Means, eta 2t is eta tt. It means that I have a second order differential equation, but in the right-hand side, I have also a second order derivative for eta. And so this is not a well-posed equation because I have the same order. So what I have to do, I have to put this in the left-hand side. And fortunately, this is a very nice operator. It's a symmetric and strictly positive operator. So now putting this on the other side, I have something nice. And this is why I have, I have this term here. Yeah, I take gamma S is the trace of this quantity on gamma S. And so I have this operator and this matrix here. And so I end up with something which is quite complicated, but still nice. What is this? This is the equation for the fluid. If I have taken the previous linearized model, this is the Stokes operator. This is the component corresponding to eta 1. So there is no contribution of eta 1. This is the contribution of eta 2t at the boundary. So this is the component for eta 2. And so I have to, eta 2, this corresponds to V equal to eta 2 in the normal direction at the boundary. L is the lifting operator. So this is the contribution of the Dirichlet boundary condition depending on eta 2. Okay. this is the equation for the structure. So this corresponds to eta 1. So what I write is that eta 2 will be the time derivative of eta 1. This is the equation for eta 2. So this is the main part. This is the damping term. And this is the remaining part, which depends on the other term for the pressure. Okay, and it's all. And so finally, we can introduce the fluid structure operator in this form, which is a quite little bit complicated operator. So it's the space of function which has to be written in this form. I have to write the equation for PV, eta 1, eta 2, in this space. And I have to write the following compatibility condition between PV and the lifting of eta 2. So this takes into account the fact that I have V equal to eta 2 on the boundary. Okay, so thanks to that, I can prove that the operator A is the infinitesimal generator of an analytic semigroup on the space Z. The analyticity is here is a little bit tricky, so we have to use two results: the analyticity for Ossin, the analyticity for the damped beam equation, and we have to take into account the coupling between both. But it works, and we can show additionally that the resultant of A is compact. And so thanks to that, we obtain local existence in time. We can extend to maximal existence, but I think I have not time to do that. So now I would like to say a few things about the fluid structure model, the stabilization, either in this case or in this one. I am going to write the mathematical details in this framework. So what I have to consider the fluid equation, the structure equation. These are the same as before, but now I would like to introduce some stationary states. So I take something which is non-homogeneous here. I can put something else here, but okay, we just write like that. And so we have to introduce the stationary solution. So the stationary solution is given by some inflow boundary condition for the velocity. And for simplicity, but it can be done in another situation, we put some force here in order to balance this term, and in such a way that the stationary solution is given by this velocity and a displacement equal to 0. So we are in the situation in which the stationary solution is a non-zero velocity, a non-zero pressure, but a zero displacement. And so the corresponding linearized model is like that. So what is the difference with the previous situation? The difference is that now, because US is not zero, and it's only due to that, we have some interaction between the equation for V and eta 1 and eta 2, and the divergence of the linearized model is now no longer zero. It depends on eta 1. So what I denote by A1, A2, and A3 are operators. So there are some derivative involved. I do not give all the details. And I have also another operator here. So the structure is, it's doable, but it's much more complicated. And the equation also for the pressure is much more delicate. So in particular, we have this additional term, this term too, but this one. And because of this additional term, which comes from the divergence condition, we end up with something similar to the previous form, but now with an operator here which is a little bit more complicated, and an operator here which is no longer symmetric because of this additional term. The analysis can be done still in that case, but it's more complicated. And I'm not going to present the details, but it's doable. What I have to introduce is just the fact that the domain of this operator, which is defined like that, is a space of function for which we have this regularity and this compatibility condition. Now the compatibility condition is only with, not only with eta 2 between the velocity v and eta 2 due to the boundary condition v equal to eta 2n, but we have also to take into account the fact that the divergence of v is no longer 0, is equal to A3 eta 1. So it's a little bit more complicated, but it's doable. Now, I need the adjoint system. And for the adjoint, so for the direct system, it was quite complicated. The situation for the adjoint is worst. Why? Okay, when we make integration by part, so we compute the adjoint in a classical way with Green formula, we try to eliminate, and we end up with a system of this form. So this is quite classical when we compute the adjoint of the Oseen system, it's fine, and because we have a Neumann boundary condition, when we compute the adjoint, we have this additional term in the Neumann condition. So this is not complicated. This is very classical. But in the structure equation, we found something a little bit more complicated. We have here the inverse of the Bielaplace operator applied to this function. Psi is the pressure of the adjoint state, and so on. Okay. It's doable, but the domain is quite bad. Not bad, but it is as it is. What I need to know that in the adjoint, the functions are of this form. I have to introduce here the transpose operator of this matrix operator MA, and I must know that the element in this domain are of this form, plus some other compatibility condition. Okay, why I need this? Because I would like to repeat what I did previously for the system. I would like to use for the feedback a feedback based on spectral projection. Okay, now I just recall two things corresponding to what I presented yesterday. Okay, remember that your space Z is split into two parts. This is the part on which you would like to compute the feedback, and this is the part that you would like to stabilize, and this is the stable part. we have to introduce the projector on which is of this form. With P or without P, it's not important. D lambda. Okay, but we would like to use that from a numerical viewpoint. And from a numerical viewpoint, we do not compute the projector like that. Of course, this formula can be numerically approximated, and it can be used to verify that the projector that you introduce in another way correspond to this projector defined like that. It's the same one, but we can prove that the projector can be expressed in the following form. So Z is Hilbert space. We identify Z with its dual, its classical. But once you have done an identification, you cannot identify everything with everything. So when we compute here the adjoint, we have this decomposition for the adjoint operator, which is different from this one. So when we have these two decomposition, what we need a basis for ZU, which is a basis for the generalized eigenspace, which can be computed numerically, and a basis for the dual space ZU star, and you have to choose the basis in such a way that you have some bi-orthogonality condition. Means EI inner product with phi j in Z is equal to delta Ej, which is 0 if I is non-equal to j and 1 other ways. Okay, so numerically, what we need to compute eigenvector for ZU, eigenvector for ZU star, and we need to determine the projector like that. It's why we need the adjoint and the adjoint formulation. So there is a little bit difficulty in the sense that the eigenvector for the operator A are given by, as usual, A times Z equal to lambda Z. Lambda may be complex. Okay, and the same for A star. But numerically, we do not use the operator A. We use the PD. And we have to write the relationship between this equation and this one. They are the same, but we need to know what is the meaning of this bi-orthogonality condition. So what can be proved is this fact. The fact that if you take an eigenvector for A, we know that the domain of A is the vector of this form, the vector of this form. So we have to take the projection of V eta 1, eta 2. So if we have an eigenvector of this, and if we write I minus PV as it is written in the decomposition, the classical decomposition, and the corresponding pressure given by some complicated expression, but we can study. So we have equivalence between this statement and the fact that VQ eta 1 eta 2 is an eigenvector for lambda of the PD system. So we have the link between the PD formulation and the operator formulation. This is essential. And we can do the same for the adjoint. So I skip the details, but we have something similar for the adjoint. And so we have an additional result saying that the orthogonality, the bi-orthogonality condition at the level of operator is similar, is exactly the same as the bi-orthogonality condition for the vector computed with the PD system. So this is very important because what we need when we make stabilization by using this spectral projection, we need that, but it's impossible to compute that. But numerically, we can check this condition. So this seems to be a little bit strange, but very important. Okay, now I have to prove some stabilizability condition. And the stabilizability condition can be expressed in terms of some unique continuation property for the eigenvector of the eigenfunction of the adjoint system. So this is an eigenvector for the adjoint system. If I want to have stabilization up to minus omega, I have to consider all the eigenvalue and eigenvector for which the real part of lambda is greater than minus omega. And if this condition, B star applied to the eigenvector equal to, which is equal to this, is equal to 0, means if zeta 2 is equal to 0, zeta 2 is the displacement of the adjoint problem, then we must be able to prove that phi, psi, eta 1 and eta 2 are 0. So what does it mean? It means that this is my domain. Okay. What I know that, and in this domain, I consider an eigenvector of the adjoint equation, which is phi, psi, zeta 1, zeta 2. So I must prove that if zeta 2 is 0, then the other components are also 0. Okay. What can I do is the following. So if we assume, it is not proved, but it can be checked numerically, at least is a generic property. If we assume that the spectrum of linearized Navier-Stokes Oseen operator is disjoint from the spectrum of the damped beam equation, then we can prove something. We can show that we are reduced to a unique continuation property for the Oseen operator. And in that case, we have a positive answer if US, the stationary solution, is 0. So when we stabilize around 0, everything works. We can do that using a result by Osses and Puel published in 2009. When US is not 0, but if US is small in the H1 norm, then using the result of lecture 1, we can prove that the corresponding operator is a perturbation of this one. And in that case, we can apply the first theorem I presented in lecture 1, saying that if this space is stabilizable, we know it is because of this result, then this one is also stabilizable. So it's a kind of theoretical result, but for US small. So what can be done otherwise? We can try to check something numerically. So a sufficient condition for the stabilizability is this property for the Gramian operator introduced here. It must be bounded from below by some positive constant here. So I write the operator in this form. And what I know that when this operator is strictly positive, that is when it is invertible, if I compute its inverse is the solution to the following Riccati equation, which for which the observation operator here is equal to 0. Of course, there is another obvious solution to this equation, which is x equal to 0, but I impose, sorry, this is not p, but x. I impose that x is strictly positive. So in that case, the solution exists if and only if this Gramian operator is strictly positive. And so at the numerical level, what I can do, I can compute an approximation of this. It will give me some approximate solution to the feedback, to the Riccati equation, and I can check if this operator is strictly positive. It means that I can check it if at the discrete level, the family here is stabilizable or not. It's not a proof of the stabilizability of the initial operator. But what I would like to mention here is the fact that we can use the numerical approximation to have an idea of what is doable or not. For example, if you have a system, let's say Navier-Stokes, or not necessarily, okay, you would like to stabilize by some control localized in this part or elsewhere. So when you compute this quantity here, the fact that you control in this part or in this part is taken into account by your control operator. So the control operator is changing if you change the control location. And so you can compute this for different control locations. And if you have one control location which is better at the numerical level, you can expect that it is also better for the continuous system. So it gives the numerical analysis here may help to give some hint to what can be done. Okay, now, so thanks to that, we can prove a stabilization result for the closed loop nonlinear system, a local stabilization result. I do not give details about that. So now I have a few minutes. I would like to show you a few things about the numerical approximation, and I would like to end up with showing you some numerical results. So I would like to make the approximation of a simple problem, this one. So now we take the corresponding linear problem or linearized problem around the zero solution. It's given like that, and I would like to make the analysis. I need to justify all the approximation error. Means I have not to solve the evolution equation. I have to solve the stationary solution for some lambda. So I choose lambda large enough to have this operator invertible, and I would like to estimate the difference between the solution to this equation for a given right-hand side, which is given here, here, and here, and the associated problem when I make a discretization by finite element method. So I have to introduce the following bilinear form for the fluid, for the divergence, for the structure, and for the damping in the structure. I think I will not have time to present everything, but I'm going to give just the main idea. So the main idea here is to write the variational formulation for Stokes coupled to the elastic part in a classical way, but I take into account the boundary condition u equal to eta 2 in the normal direction in a weak form. It means I write this and I take some multiplier here in the dual space, and because I take this in a weak form, I have to introduce the corresponding Lagrange multiplier theta in the fluid equation. And when the solution is regular, theta is nothing else than the stress tensor at the boundary. Okay, this is a classical formulation for the Stokes equation. This is the formulation for the beam equation. Okay, so now the idea is to say, okay, to make the numerical analysis, I'm going to use a monolithic formulation. So it means I'm going first to replace eta 2 by lambda eta 1 g and write everything for eta. So I end up with something which is simpler. And I'm going to make the sum between the two. But of course, I need, if I want to write a monolithic formulation and something, I need some compatibility condition between the velocity of the test, of the test function and the displacement of the test function. So I take here the same compatibility condition as the one I have for the solution. And thanks to that, when I make the sum between the, thanks to that, when I make the sum between the two equations, when I make the sum between this equation, so this term and that one, if I take the compatibility condition V equal to psi n, this term is cancelled with this one. So this is the trick. We end up with a nice form. And I've not time to give details, but the idea is like that. We can do the same for the discrete problem. Of course, we have to make the approximation of the beam. So we need some Hermite element, and we have to take a projection in order to make, to compare elements which are in the space P2 and cubic Hermite element. It's why we need this projector. But thanks to that, the idea is nearly the same. And next, we have to use ideas which are classical for stocks, but which are not at all classical for free structure model, but everything works. I skip the details about the different formulation. We have to, these are the trick, more or less. We would like to have an estimate on U minus UH. And so we have to introduce some projection of UH. And so we have to split this quantity into the square norm of the error that I want to estimate plus additional term. And at the end, what I obtain after a long list of calculation, I obtain the following results. Yeah, it means that the error for the velocity in L2 norm plus the error in H1 norm plus the error for eta and the error of Laplace of eta, and also this comes from the damping term, so I have several estimates, and I have an estimate of order 1 plus 2 alpha naught. Alpha naught depends on the loss of regularity. Here I have at the junction between Dirichlet and Neumann. Okay, after that, the expression for the pressure can be obtained. We can also use the duality argument. And now I would like to end. So what I'm going to show you is a numerical simulation for which you have some perturbation. And so we can compare what happened with or without control here. Okay, so due to some perturbation at the inflow boundary condition, we see the vortex, the shading of vortices, and this is the same simulation with the control. So the plate is deformed like that. There is still some oscillation, and we are going to see that after a long time, we come back to the full stationary solution. Why we have something here which is always of the same type. Okay, it's not too long. So Shirchendu, give me the few additional seconds I need to stabilize fully the fluid structure model. Okay, it's nearly the end. And it's the end of the talk and of this series of lectures. Thank you.
So,
what is the control?
Okay, the control is a force in the beam equation. So we use the force to deform the beam, and the deformation of the beam is used to control the flow, to stabilize the flow.
One more question. The periodic solutions also will be possible in all the systems you considered?
Periodic in time?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's much more, yeah, numerically it's much more complicated, but I think it's doable, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, stabilization period. Around
First of all, existence has been done. Existence.
We have already written something together.
But that is without structure.
No, yeah, for Navier-Stokes, but yeah. I think we can do the same for...
I thought Casanova had a...
Yeah, Casanova studied that type of problem.
Which problem was that? Was that also beam? And...
Yes, it was that. Yeah.
One more question. In your slide, you have algebraic Riccati equation, but degenerate.
Yes.
Any particular reason you went for degenerate Riccati?
Okay, no, here the degenerate Riccati equation is used because the solution is the inverse of the Gramian operator. So when I want to prove that the system is stabilizable, I have several possibilities. One is the unique continuation property for a family of eigenvectors. The other one is to use the Gramian operator corresponding to this the projected system, and to prove that this Gramian operator is invertible, is strictly positive. It is a symmetric non-negative operator, but we must show it is positive. And to check that it is positive is equivalent to check that its inverse is bounded from below or from above. So this is where we need the Riccati solution, because the Riccati solution of the degenerate equation give exactly the Gramian.
Thank you.
This is